learning from data. He first began his belief in data during a sales career for a printing and shipping company, but wanted to do something more meaningful than selling copies. He found his cause in his role as Assistant Director of Development Services at Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania, where he paired data, people, and possibilities with fundraising. From there, Matt branched off into all aspects of working with data to create better outcomes for students, ranging from reporting and analytics, data architecture, data governance, and even data cleanup. And cleanup is fun, I agree, is what he says. Throughout his time at public and private universities and colleges, nonprofits addressing global homelessness and financial equity, and that one startup CRM company that we're not going to talk about, Matt has strived to share his joy of uncovering stories within data to forge relationships and make lives better. He's currently here in Worcester with me, and we are thrilled to have him virtually. And the founding of his company is named after his 15-year-old corgi named Foxy. And is that who's in the picture?
Yes. Oh, there'll be more of her. Don't worry.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, then I'm going to
coming.
turn it over to Matt, and we are excited to learn from you today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I love having people who are curious about emerging things that are happening, especially when it comes to innovations in fundraising. So the good part is that like the core of fundraising has always been the same, and it's not changing. It's just getting better and faster. And when it came down to this type of talk, I really, really stressed out about how I make something that is relevant for everybody who's on the call. So I acknowledge that there are a lot of people who have different levels of technological like skills. There are people who have a different comfort level. There are different organizations. And so I really want to make sure that someone takes home something from today, even if it's only to like talk about how cute my dog is. But we'll get to that, right? So just know that there are takeaways from this, and there are additional conversations that are going to take place from all of this. But really what I want to make sure is, let's share the screen. Let's deal with Teams. Everyone can see a very large screen, yes? I've lost Teams. Let me make sure I can
see
it
it.
For a second.
We can see it.
Great. Okay. There we go. Okay, cool. I really want to make sure that you get the most from your data because there is a lot of value that you can get from data. I think we miss it though. But let's talk about something important. Let's talk about me for a nutshell, right? Like Tiffany said, people, technology, and fundraising since 2007. That's kind of my butter zone. I've been at 5 higher education institutions, a housing NPO that used to 3D print houses in Latin America. Whole discussion later. And that startup CRM, once again, we're not talking about that. I wear a lot of different hats like all of you. I'm a spouse, 2-time dad. I recently found my biological family. I love telling stories. I like computers outside of work. I play a lot of games with my friends to stay connected. I really believe in technology as a way of starting communications and keeping people together. I also love Cleveland and I love cooking, all things that bring people to the table. And of course, I'm a dog dad. This is Foxy. She's a Pembroke Welsh Corgi. She will be 16 in May. If you've not dealt with Corgis before, they are adorable. It's a trap. Don't fall for any of this. They are very, very interesting dogs. And that's because of why they were made. Corgis were not bred to be internet meme dogs. They were bred to herd cattle. So as you see pictured in this slide, there is a big, stubborn, beastly thing that is very tough to move, and also a cow and a corgi. So data, just like corgis, or just like cattle, can be very stubborn to move. But if you want to move cattle or data, it's really great to have some of the things that corgis are known for. They are very vocal dogs. They are very loud and assertive. They may be small, but they are mighty. And that's because they're so smart. These are fuzzy little geniuses we're dealing with. And the only thing they're really afraid of are baths. They love getting dirty and they love getting involved with what's going on. And that's kind of what you need to do. You need to have that like type of grit and that type of just resolve when it comes to working with data. And yes, this corgi in particular is just really great at herding cows. They can herd up to about 30 cows each. There are some that will take on larger herds, so they can do very monumental things. We use data in fundraising for so many different roles. I've got a word cloud here that talks about some of the key things that we do as fundraisers, some of the functions that keep us afloat. So we do it to accomplish these things, but to go more philosophical with all of this, why did we start using data? I mean, we do have to coordinate relationships. We have to make sure that we record what happened. We have to have contact lists so we know who to talk to and when to talk to them. But why are we doing all of this? And when it comes down to that philosophical, what I usually find in the places that I've worked and the people I talk to is that we've always done it that way. And everyone else is doing it. Everyone loves using data because it's the expectation of what we have to do. The harder part of this and the difficult layer is people start to do more and more complicated things with technology and with data, and it moves quickly. And to be a little self-critical, our organizations don't move that fast. But we find some best practices and we see things that other people are doing and we want to emulate that. But what we're missing and what prevents us from getting deeper with technology is dreaming. We need to dream a little bit. We need to stop asking why people are doing things or why data isn't doing things for us. We need to ask what if. What if our data directed our action? What if our data gave us shout outs and said, you're doing the right thing, keep going? What if it told us issues that were coming up? What if it made the humanistic things that we are trying to do as fundraisers easier and more intuitive and gave us more time to do the things that computers will never do for us? What if it took the precious staff time that we don't have, the positions we wish we had, and it fills in some of those gaps and allows us to get some of those competencies and some of those payoffs from those positions that we might never get? So dream a little bit with your data. And there is an actual process that exists that allows us to dream with data. It is a framework that is called data governance, which is a really boring way to talk about dreaming with data, right? People think about governance and they think it's stuffy and they do think it's ties and suits, but data governance is really making a well-defined plan and a place for data in your organization. The takeaway is data governance is scalable, right? Anyone can do this. It doesn't have to be someone who's a data leader. It doesn't have to be someone who's a director of advancement services or advancement resources. You don't have to work in IT. Anybody can be a part of data governance. And what it really is all about is these 5 different takeaways that we're going to talk about today. Making sure that you're making the most of your data usage, making sure that everyone's got a part in data, making sure that things are relevant, making sure that it's a communication tool, and then making sure that you're making good decisions about data and making sure that it's building on those processes. To talk about them a little bit more, we can just make this a conversation. Data governance doesn't have to be something that's formalized or that you need to talk to your leadership about. Just start with a conversation. Just make sure that you say, like, what is data doing for me? How do we make better? Or even complaining a little bit. I'm giving you free rein to complain about data a bit, as long as you're willing to invest in the solution. That's the caveat here. So I want to talk about these 5 points in a little bit more detail. The first is intentionality. We usually will let the data cattle make the decision for us. But if we want to be good data corgis, we have to make sure that we are telling the data cattle what we need it to do. If we need it to be corralled in a certain place, we are the ones who make that call. We don't let our databases or our CRMs make the decisions for us. That's why I've accentuated this point in the bottom. CRMs and databases are tools that help us to accomplish our goals. They are not comprehensive strategies that tell us what to do. Take some time. Take a breather. If you have an annual retreat, if you have a pause in your year once the fiscal year ends, it's really worthwhile to sit down with everybody and say, what do we need data to do for us? Do we need it to fill a gap for us? Do we need it to just be a source of truth where everyone puts all of their information and it's our collective knowledge? Do we need deeper analysis? Do we need to have notifications and sign-offs and just accountability with our CRMs and our databases? Or does it need to be something more? Have that talk. It's sometimes uncomfortable. Sometimes having a facilitator is really great for this sort of thing. And sometimes it's hard to ask for help. But at the same time, once again, CRMs and databases are tools that help us, not the other way around. I do have to point out, I've got Sisyphus here. We're not rolling boulders up the hill so they can roll back down. We're not just doing data to do data. We're doing data to help us out. One of my favorite exercises to help with this is to write a help wanted ad for your data. Think about this. Would you hire an intern or a full-time employee and just say, this is Steve. He's here to do something. We haven't decided what that is yet, but he'll figure it out as he goes. The same thing with your data. Intentionally, what do you want data to tell you? What do you want it to be responsible for monitoring? And in return, what are you willing to invest to make sure that you get those insights or that type of guidance? There's an entire document that I have that helps this. So if you want it afterwards, let's talk. I will make sure that you have that. But it's a step-by-step guide to talk about exactly how to ask of things of data. Like for example, I want data to tell me the most recent people who have given, so I can write them a heartfelt handwritten thank you note. Data can do that, and we can set up things very easily to do that. This can also be pain points. So once again, free reign to complain a little bit. I spend too much time doing this. I really wish I had more time to do this other thing. Also a great use of data. The second key point of data governance is ownership. This is one of those cases where everyone's responsibility is data, which means that it's no one's job at all. If everyone's responsible for it, no one's responsible for it. You have to really determine the key things that keep data running. Who enters and changes data? Who verifies it and approves it and says it's exactly what we need? And who's ultimately responsible for the quality of the data? This can also be documented in terms of operating procedures, but you want to make sure that if there's a problem, you know who to turn to, who's going to fix it, and who's the person who's critically available and responsible for what's going on. It's also good to have a tiebreaker. So if there are discussions that get a little heated about what makes good data, you can reach out to other people who are invested with that piece of data, whether it's a specific field or whether it's the raw data, and say, great, can you help us to determine what's in our best interests here? Ownership is very often skipped. It's very easy to skip that part. So if there's one of these key parts besides the intentionality, I would say that ownership is also a big key to what we're trying to accomplish with data governance. I'll take a breath. There we go. The third one, goals. I would imagine that if we've got 17 people on this call, that we are all doing fundraising 17 different ways. These goals are making sure that the main things that we do, the secret sauce that sets us apart from all the other nonprofits, that it is represented within whatever platform we have. If you have a spreadsheet that is just a basic Excel spreadsheet, does it encapsulate the special programs that you're doing? A good point. So the nonprofit that I worked for in housing, they were pretty advanced. We had a CRM that we spent a lot of resources on, not just money, but also people and time and developers. One of the key things that they accepted was Bitcoin as a gift because we worked in El Salvador, and the two main currencies in El Salvador are the US dollar and Bitcoin. So if we wanted to fund houses in El Salvador, we had to accept Bitcoin. But within our CRM, there was no way to accept Bitcoin as a gift or to record that Bitcoin was a currency that we received. That's a problem. So what we had to do is put a bunch of workarounds in place. And workarounds are fine. But if you're running on things like galas, if you're running on events, and your CRM doesn't have an event module, you're kind of out of luck. So make sure that that context is recorded in a place, and it's also not something that is a repurposed field. It has to fit what you're doing, and it has to tell the full story in a very clear and concise type of way. If there are things that are also functional across your organization, things like we have to make sure that staff are tied to these results or staff are tied to responsibilities. If there's a place where they're validated, like an HR database or an HR CRM, any opportunity you have to connect those things to make sure that they are okay is a really great thing to do. That way we make sure it's directly connected to an actual person, that it is not going to be incorrectly connected. Sometimes people will fat finger things and they will type the wrong name in. You see my last name, it says Gullatta. It's got two L's and two T's and two A's that are disconnected from each other. There have been times things are assigned to me in a database, and one T, Matt Gullatta, gets that assignment and I miss it altogether in reports. So make sure that if there is anything that is mission critical, that it can be assigned directly to those people. The fourth part, reports. This is a communication tool. Reports are the way that we get all of the great data and insights out to people. We need to make sure that there's clarity in the way that we do reports. Uh, if there were anything that I was going to do a full day seminar on, it would be the power of reports and how we make effective, meaningful reports to everybody. Reports are also the thing that take the most time. Reports can be a massive, massive, massive resource drain because everyone wants them. So if there's any possibility to automate, this is a great place to put it. Find out what people need, find out the frequency they need, and then find ways to get it to them however best. If you've got an internet portal, embed them in those portals. If you can send them via email, send them that way. This is also the way that is going to be one of the most resource heavy. Reporting tools are really expensive. If you like something like Tableau that's highly visual and tells a great story, it's very difficult to get enterprise type reporting from Tableau without at least a pound of flesh, if not more. It is powerful though, but there are ways around it. So like Tableau has a desktop version that will do full reporting, but you're missing some of the things like allowing sharing or automated sending. So I've seen places where people will have like desktop Tableau and it connects to their data sources. They go ahead and refresh the reports from their live data sources, and then they have to screenshot everything and send it out through manual emails. So there are always ways to get that information out to people if it's not the most intuitive or the most efficient. But if it is important that people get those reports, you can find a way. The other part is that you also have to provide context. Context is so important. We're not just doing types of measurement to say, hey, we got $100,000. We have to frame it within all of the things that we're trying to accomplish. So $100,000 might sound great unless you have $1 million goal, and then you're only 10% to goal. People should know if things are good, bad, or neutral very quickly. You're telling a story within seconds here. You don't want to have to sit there with everybody and talk through an hour-long meeting to convey what the report is trying to do or what the next action steps are. The best way that I can phrase this too is there are different ways. Like people deal mostly with reports and dashboards. Dashboards are a very tricky premise because everything can be a dashboard, but just because you put something on a dashboard doesn't mean you should. I really like 4-quadrant dashboards that tell 4 different stories of 4 critical things, and that's it. We can look at data as kind of like a reminder in time. They can tell us what happened long ago, like it can tell our entire history. It can tell us what just happened recently within the past couple of weeks. It can tell us what's going on right now. But it also look forward, like what's happening next or what's happening in the future. So specifically for these 3, what's happening right now, what's next, and what's in the future, these are the things that are great candidates for dashboards. And that's because think about the dashboard on your car. Temporarily on newer cars, you do have a spot that shows you your backup camera, but that's only when you're looking backwards and when you're backing up. If you're going forward and your backup camera's on, you need to talk to a mechanic. Dashboards are meant to inform us, to tell us what's going on, what's forward, what's ahead of us, what are the opportunities and the obstacles that we're facing. So it might be nice to have something that shows us what happened 2 years ago in terms of our fundraising and our totals. It's great for comparison's sake. But at the same time, what can we do about what happened 2 years ago? Not a whole lot. So make sure that if we are going to make this an effective communication tool and people want to look at this, dashboards have to change. They have to be the bright, shiny, flashy lights that people are visiting often, and that's what makes an effective dashboard. We can memorize the number that happened 2 years ago, but I'm probably going to have a hard time talking about who clicked on our website 10 minutes ago. That's what I'm tuning in for. I can go on a whole soapbox about dashboards. I've made horrible dashboards in the past. I'm sure Catherine's nodding her head about that. Sorry about that. But at the same time, don't fall into the same mistakes that I have. I also, along with reports, have to mention AI. AI usage is a great thing if you put in the investment for it. One thing that you should know is that most of the AI tools that we use, broad scope, are LLCs. They are based off of patterns. They're based off of language patterns. And if you ask, you will always get an answer. This is not me trying to keep data analysts and data professionals employed, I think there's always going to be a spot for people in technology to interpret and make them actionable and into things that people need. But there are times where you will ask me a question and I will say, I don't know. That shows a deeper level of understanding. With AI, if you ask a question, you will always get an answer definitively, and you also can challenge it, and they will backpedal and they will talk about things that they might have missed. However, the larger level of discernment that happens with a person, cheap pitch again for me, is that they can look into it in the context of what you're trying to do. In many cases, you will also find that talking to an AI agent is very akin to talking to a rando off of the street. You don't know who this AI agent is or what it really knows, but it will give you an answer and it will tell you what's going on. There are ways around that, though. We can train AI agents, and I will talk about a piece that is helpful in one of the upcoming points that will help the AI agents to get to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what you're trying to accomplish. The other thing, too, is to play off the rando on the street again. Once you put your information out there to a lot of the AI tools that are out there, is that it's basically considered public information. Read the terms and conditions if you never want to sleep again and worry about the integrity of your data. Just know that it is good to put some anonymity into the records that you have. So if you can take some PII or some data that might be a little sensitive and obfuscate it when you send it to AI, you can also use a crosswalk later to find out who it was talking about or who might be some of those results without sending it out and broadcasting it to the broader analytic uses that might be out there. So just know that. And there is, of course, from my favorite webcomic, XCKD, the deep AI hire candidate algorithm. Most of the weight goes into being more excited about using the platform. So just make sure that the usage of the platform that you're using isn't to consider more iteration of using that platform. It's actually to help you out and make sure that you're making the right decisions about what you're doing. The fifth and final point, consistency goes a long way with working with data. There are so many things that we can do that we can just let fall off. And this really is a type of garden premise. If you want to keep a nice, great garden, if you want to grow pizza trees, if that's your goal, you do have to prune them every once in a while. You have to set time to work on data. And whether that's something that happens weekly, monthly, annually, whatever you can commit to and whatever you've got time to, invest that time because it's worth it. If you are a part of a broader team, it's really good to go along with point number 2, which is ownership, to make sure that you've got some type of agreement where you talk about when things will be looked at, when they'll be updated. And if you have those types of things to say, I'm going to look at this monthly on the first day of the month when our books are closing, it helps to build trust in the data and to know those windows when the data is going to be cleanest and freshest. You also want to make sure that there are procedures around your key operational procedures. So basically, if I'm running an event, I want to make sure that a month before the event, we're looking at addresses so we can make sure that we don't get bounce backs or postcards that are coming back or invitations that we're spending a bunch of time stuffing. We want to make sure that we've got any change of addresses that have taken place. If we're sending out email blasts, we want to make sure that everything is formatted correctly to send through our email tools. If we have a large push on our key areas of operation, we want to make sure that we've got gifts recorded in a timely way. So we're not asking people for support when they've already given support. We want to let people know that we're recording gifts on a daily process, and the largest amount of time that it might sit is 48 hours in the case of a weekend or holidays, whatever it may be. We also want to make sure that we've got integrity checks in place for those key pieces of data. We can have things called critical data elements, things that shape the way that we make decisions or that we send out things. If we're heavy on mailing, addresses are going to be a critical data element. We want to make sure that there's a street line, there's city, state, and zip. If we're sending internationally, we want to make sure that the country code is available. But we also want to talk about when we're going to be doing those checks, when we're cleaning data and when making sure that everything is up to our standards. It's also worth writing down what our standards are. What makes a good address? What makes for a good email address? What is deliverable? How do we want people's names formatted? Do we want it to say Mr. Matthew Gullatta, or is Matt Gullatta okay because we're cool with Matt and we're on a friendly relationship with him? We also want to make sure that we are doing things as clean as possible from the onset. Having data entry guides, fitting along with our data standard guides are really, really helpful. So just know that when it comes to all of this, if you can enter something right the first time, it saves a lot down path. I know that there is a need for us to get things done quickly, but this is really a stitch in time saves nine. I'm one of the 1900 kids too, so that's a really old axiom, but it does make sense. If you can fix something, if you can put something in the system and not need to fix it later, it makes things so much easier. A lot of this consistency, the thing that differentiates messing around with data and scientific data usage is writing it down. So putting out guides for things like data standards, putting out the intentionality for why you collect data, and even running some data experiments. Challenge yourself. Write a document that says, I would like to find out who our best donors are, and because of that, I will, and you spell out the scope of what you're trying to do. You also want to make sure that you've got your goals stated. My goal is to reach out to more of our major prospects. We also want to talk about the follow-up, good, bad, or otherwise. Things don't always turn out when you're working with data, and it's okay to learn from failure in this place. I reached out and I got wealth screening for everybody, and I thought this would help answer the question. It turns out many of these people weren't interested or connected in the way I thought. The lesson for next time is I need to find a second measure that will help us to figure out how connected they are to our cause and how much we actually talk to them. My takeaway here is make a data journal. As crazy as it may seem, in our digital age, I still very much write things down on a legal pad. So I will write down the scope of what's going on. I will write notes to myself, lessons learned, and things I want to iterate next time. I also have a format for this that's available in Word that talks through some of the things that we might want to record that are typically missed. But this is fantastic when it comes to the larger initiatives that we're trying to accomplish as well. If you've got campaigns, it's really great to talk about the scope of your campaign, what you're trying to do, who your targets are, what additional data you might need, and then also the results eventually. That's great for historical knowledge. It's a great way to make sure that if there is turnover, that you're not missing that historical data. And also, if you start launching the next campaign, you can go back and say, oh, here's all the things we wish we knew when we launched into it. Data journaling is a lot of fun. It's also data therapeutic. We also want to talk about policies. I'm going to skim over this one a lot because this is the boring part of data governance that people don't like talking about, but you have to make sure that your policies match the practices that you have. You want to make sure that there's security in place. Protecting your data is the first thing that you need to do to make sure that it's an asset. You have to talk about who can and can't see things. You have to make sure that proper usage is documented and also improper usage is documented. The other part too that no one likes to talk about is the consequences of if you don't treat data like an asset. Will there be access that's revoked? Will there be larger implications? Are we going to talk about employment status? Is there going to be a lot of training that goes along with it? If you're really serious about your data, you have to make sure that there are those follow-ups and there are those guidelines about what happens when things go wrong, maliciously or not. To put some of these in practice, we've talked about those 5 things that are really important. I'm going to talk about some of my experiences. Once again, you can learn from the gray hairs. You can learn from some of the pain that I had. I worked for a university that will not be named. We had 45,000 plus potential contacts and a very ambitious fundraising goal, but we only had 9 contact officers. So was the expectation that we were going to have 5,000 outreaches by 9 contact officers in 1 calendar year? Absolutely not. This required us to be intentional, to have really specific goals that were reflected in the data that we were working with, to have reports that would coordinate those 9 people with their precious little time, and to be consistent. So here's what we decided to do. We decided we needed better information about these people and the ability of the impact that they could make on our institution. We also needed history about what they have supported in the past to make sure that there was some type of fit. We also had to figure out who was available. Not all 45,000 people had good addresses or ways that we could reach out to them. Sometimes it was just a name in a class year, and that's not enough to reach out to someone. We had to work through networks sometimes in order to find out like who was worth reaching out to. So what we did was we built a really great report. It was a simple grid. We made a grid that built affinity on one side, which showed how connected someone was or how passionate they were, or actually how crazy they were at clicking our website. There were some people that were those chronic workers, and we'd put something out on social media, and within minutes, they would like it and share it. And those were our biggest fans that we wanted to look at. And make sure that like we were reaching out to those people. Who were the people who couldn't wait to hear what we had to say next? On the other axis, we had our capacity. What was the potential based off of research, based off of data that we could purchase and incorporate with our own data to figure out who could make those larger gifts, who we could have those conversations with about things like scholarships, things like naming of buildings, things like leadership annual giving. And it looked a little bit like this. These are nice straight columns because we categorized all of our giving capacity. So we had one that was like at $50. So these were our people who were our really good operating fund and annual giving people. We had people who could make larger gifts at $250,000. These were some of our scholarship people. And then we were starting to get into our $500,000 and $1 million range. So the way this reads is the further left they are, the smaller their capacity. The further right, the higher the capacity for a gift. And along the other axis, we've got people who were zeros. We rated the 0 to 100. These were people who weren't engaging with our stuff as much. They weren't in touch. We weren't seeing them interact with some of our posts. But here were our best people. Here were the people who were really freaking out about our posts. So if we go to the top right, these are our people who were the biggest movers and shakers and our biggest champions. We found that many of these were people who were on our governing board, and so we could have an additional conversation with them and ask them to either give suggestions about who some of these other people were, or if they were brand new, have someone reach out to them on our behalf and start a conversation about how we could really get them to leverage some of their resources and talk about possibilities. Within here, we could talk about other things. Like here's our leadership annual donors. We talked to these people about larger gifts this year. We could talk to these people about maybe funding a scholarship, and then work our way down the list. So that way we kind of worked in a diagonal line, starting from the upper right-hand corner all the way down to the lower left and work our way through the list. And that was the best use of our time. We found some refinement in all of this. We found some opportunities for us to incorporate more data that articulated a third axis. They would also talk about some of the key initiatives we had during our campaign, and they would allow us to really focus on like putting on the cherry on top of our campaign. Who were people who were really, really passionate about this specific academic program? Cool. Once we did that, it really helped to filter out some of our conversations. Second case study. When I worked for that nonprofit that built houses, we wanted to have a really intentional way of thanking people and showing the impact that an overall corporation could have with just the things that we were doing with housing people. The problem we had is that our data was super messy. We had a lot of duplicates, particularly among branches of different real estate agents that were affiliated with what we were doing. There were naming conventions that were all over the place. In some cases, it would be like House Corp, and other ones would be Corp House, and other ones would be Corp House Estates, and some would be Corp House Real Estates. A mess. So what did we do? We found somebody who was really excited about this. The person who actually brought up the opportunity, it was a little bit of a complaint, but we brought her around. And we said, would you be willing to help us sort this mess out and untie this knot and turn it into a beautiful thread that we could follow to a better opportunity? We had to be consistent. This was a multi-month project. And of course, we had to have reporting so we could constantly check and make sure that as we were changing the data reflected what we wanted it to. We started to build this comprehensive picture because we changed the name of all of these different organizations to be unique, to be consistent, and to be reflective of the actual name of the organization, which allowed us to categorize those things in a report and do an actual fingers and toes count of how many contributions and the amount of those contributions that they had given to us. And it allowed us to make this really great value proposition to other real estate agencies to say, do you see what happens comprehensively when we run this program? We were able to start at the very top and say the overarching organization gave this much, and here's how it was distributed, this large number among so many thousands and thousands of different branches. This is how small branches can all boil up and make a very huge impact. It also gave us the opportunity to change the way that we outreach to those different real estate agents and branches. We could better tailor materials and programming. So we had full day seminars that were focused on the patterns that we were seeing within this data. It also allowed us to really say thank you in the most authentic way. We could see their entire interaction, their entire transaction, and everything that we could do. And we were able to articulate their impact stories along with stories from actual families that were being put into the houses that they were funding. And that's the sort of thing that gets the type of buy-in. Like, that's the stuff that data will never really do for us. Like, we were able to tell the story as humans because we had nice, clean, tidy data. We could have a heartfelt outpouring of all of the things that they were doing, and tell them just how big of heroes they actually were. And that was one of the coolest takeaways I've had in my entire fundraising career, from behind a keyboard as well too, which is great. That's it in a nutshell, and about 4 breaths that I took during this entire presentation. There is so much to grow into, but these are great starting points. If you start with these opportunities, if you're intentional with the way you have data, if you set that ownership, if you reflect your goals within the data, if you build reports that communicate and you're consistent, you're going to start to build wealth and value into your data. I hope that you've seen the intentional underlying message that I've put in here. There's a C, an O, an R, G, and yes, there's another corgi involved here. Yes. So there's our wink of approval from Foxy. Just make sure that you are being intentional with it. Ask questions of your data and make sure it's serving you in the things that you're trying to accomplish. And be tenacious and vocal about it. So in a nutshell, be a corgi. Questions?
Great. Fantastic. We do have a couple questions in the chat already. Take a breath, Matt, and I'll man the chat.
I get excited about this stuff. I really am super passionate and love this. So
absolutely. Well, I think when it's used effectively, like you've talked about, it can be so impactful for your organization. So I think you are right to be excited about it. I'm excited about it too, but I always thought it was just a dorky thing. Going back to your data journal, and I had this question too, so I'm glad Sue asked it. Can you talk a little bit more about a data journal? Because I'm intrigued by that idea. What does it look like for you?
I mean, as logical as data is, this is really kind of some like emotional type of journaling, right? This is really talking about your hopes and dreams and the things that you want to have from data. I scope it a lot with things like, through data, I hope to accomplish this, and here are the things that I will build into it. So being a data architect, mine gets to be a lot more visual. I will actually draw out the diagrams of how I want data to connect and the places where I want people to interact with it. Other people build out narratives and they write out like, our goal is 500 different brand new donors that we have the next year, and here's how I hope to accomplish that. I hope to get new lists from this organization. I'm going to incorporate it with our data. I'm going to systematically call through those lists. I'm going to distribute them to these people. It's just kind of like building that initial plan. The part of journaling that is really important is to like visit that frequently and make sure that you're updating progress. I don't know that it has to be daily. I do mine weekly, but I will weekly put out there and say like, hey, here's my status update. Here are the things that I originally thought. Here's the things I've changed. And here's the ways that I've pivoted. It's just a way to be really honest about the way you use data and give yourself permission to be wrong about your initial conceptions about this project that you're reaching out to. And then just making sure that it's well documented. So if there's any question, you can return to it and just be like, oh, what was I thinking? That's exactly what I was thinking. And here's how things changed over time. It's just kind of like a note to yourself. The messier way of doing all of this, I am going to pan my camera. No one be afraid, because this is how I usually look at this, but I'm big on post-it notes. And so I will color code them and also make sure that like the things that I know are important. So like the yellow ones were the initial things, the orange ones are changes. So like all of the things that are happening are kind of living, shuffling on there. But if you like a comprehensive document, just open a Word document for yourself and put those things out there. If you like a legal pad, write it down, get those things out there. But I will provide that template. That's just kind of like the steps and the progressive things that are going through, because it is really helpful. Does that help? Any other questions about a data journal?
That's great. And we will, AFP will make sure we get the documents from Matt and send it out to everyone, since he's been so gracious to share that with us to make sure
Of course.
that gets out. Another question, if you don't mind going back to your chart where you had done the matrix with the affinity and the yes. Sue asked, how did you populate that data? How did you come up with the qualities desired? Yes, but how did you come up with the affinity, I think is what she's asking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what I was asking was like I could sit and brainstorm the qualities, but I would not know how to populate it, the mechanics behind it. Like, how did you do that? Or I would probably need help to do that.
Yes. Yeah, we were very fortunate to have a pretty robust system that would allow us to like see the way that people were reacting to things. We had a tool specifically that looked at social media asks, and it looked at not only the quantitative things, like how many times they clicked on something or liked a post, but also the qualitative things, like what were the types of words that we're saying and were they positive or negative? What this really amounted to is like affinity is a guess. Like we guessed about what affinity was and what types of actions people took and how valuable they were to our overarching way of connecting with people. We took things like event attendance. We thought about like what it meant for someone to get ready and RSVP and give us money to show up and then actually show up. And we attributed a number of points to that. In this case, I think it was like 20 points for all the events they attended within the past year. And so we weighted it depending on the things that we thought really were impactful for people to get to know us and to like support us in different ways. And after that, we just scored people against each other. I will say that this is like a pretty unscientific way of doing a scientific affinity measure, but it was our best case, our best swing at like making sure that we could find people who were really passionate and excited about the things that we were doing. So perfection usually gets in the way because people think that data is this thing that has to be like cut and dry, lab coat, glasses on, safety goggles. You can take some swings. Like you can make some assumptions about what's going on. And if that's the best way that you can make your decision, so be it.
I wonder, Matt, going along those lines, I know we have some people here from smaller organizations who may not have this robust
Yes.
CRM that can pull that kind of data, but looking at things like attendance and you could even pull data from maybe, if you use Constant Contact or something, which emails did they open? Obviously,
Yes.
it's going to be a little more time consuming, but can you maybe suggest some ideas for smaller organizations to measure this type of affinity or commitment?
Absolutely. We had someone who would log phone calls. So every time someone had a concern, whether it was good, bad, we had people who were like, this person calls and complains all the time. And we rescoped it and said, well, that person cares. Like they're up on what you're doing. And so even though it is coming across as something that is a little critical, that person is paying attention to what you're doing. Like that is like, have a conversation with that person. They're interested. Any way that you interact with somebody, like I like to start the scoring weighted with in-person or direct contact as much as possible. Are they calling? Are they emailing? We've had people who do the number of emails that are sent. That's fantastic. That is a great way of finding out what's going on. A good way of figuring that out is look at your website and ask how you're asking people to engage with you. And if they are following your advice, find a way to measure how those people are reaching out to you. Even if that means that you're counting in a spreadsheet somewhere else. But as long as you can connect that to those people and find out how many times they're reaching out to you or vice versa and responding, that's your affinity count. Aubrey, I love that you love the Post-it notes. That's fantastic too. Keeping 3M in business.
Love the idea of ask how you're asking for engagement. That's a great thought experiment. Keep putting questions in the chat if you'd like, or if anybody has one they'd like to ask in person. I think we can do the raise the hand feature. So if anybody would like to ask a question and turn off their mic, we can do that. Looks like some people are typing, so we'll wait.
Oh, the anticipation.
I know. Go ahead, Sue.
Matt, you've been in a lot of different organizations, small, large, all of that. Sometimes you have this idea, but others don't have time or don't see the value. I mean, is there any value in essentially just starting small with yourself if you're in a bigger organization, trying to at least, again, I'm not tech savvy, but it's like the sticky notes, right? You put them on the wall and there's a gaping hole that becomes visual about
Right.
what you have and what you don't have. So have you ever experienced that, or sometimes you have to live it, breathe it, show some traction before others buy in. So didn't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a non-linear type of journey. I will say that like the more time that you can put into it, the faster you get to that aha moment. And like I got to my aha moment when I was like, okay, so I'm just a guy behind a keyboard. I don't have anyone that's assigned to me. Like I'm not talking to these people, but I know so much about them. And I could take the insights that I thought were commonplace, and I could share them with the people that were those frontline fundraisers and tell them things that they didn't know about someone they've talked to like 7 or 8 times in a row. Like that was a really cool type of thing. Like, did you know this person's really into the sport and you've never asked them to come to a match? Oh, okay, cool. Now we're talking. When it comes to doing this yourself, I think the intentionality is the really important part of it. Like trying to figure out what you're trying to get out of working with data is the most important part. And if you want to run that yourself, you can certainly do that experiment. I did that with my previous sales career when I was selling copies. Like, can I figure out a way to really get some people used to coming in and seeing all of our services and thinking that we aren't this tiny little thing that just does copies? We do something much bigger. And by doing that, I was able to say, like, who are the people that would benefit most? Great. And I built that type of hypothesis out. So yes, you can absolutely start small with one person. It's really good to have a mentor or somebody that you can talk about with those types of things to make sure that it's within the scope and that you're going to have the payoff that you want. But at the same time, like, absolutely, the only thing keeping you from doing this sort of thing is just being scared of doing it. And it's a very scary premise. There's a lot of moving pieces here, but at the same time, if you build with that intentionality and what you want from it, you can build into it pretty quickly.
Great. We have 2 questions in the chat
Yes.
from Abby. I'll read them just in case nobody can. If you can't access the chat, I'll go ahead and read them out loud. What is the best way to clean up data? Should you carve out time every week, month to do that? And follow up, best ways to start entering data in a new way when it was done differently for many years.
Yes. Both of those questions are subject to being answered by building out data standards guides. If you build out what makes for good data and what you need the data to look like in your finished products, whether it's a mailing, a report, an email, anything you can do to save that time is really helpful. It helps the cleaning of data because you're going to look at your data and you're going to go, oh my gosh, this is such a mess. I have no idea how to fix all of this in one sitting. And it's okay if it's not clean in one sitting. You probably have ways and methods and procedures of working with data in its current state. Databases will never be perfect. And so I would say that if you can set up every week to clean data a little bit and monitor it and check it a little bit, it will get better. It's one of those things that has a great payoff, and any time you can invest to it is great time. I would not recommend doing it annually because of the nature of data. Data changes so much and so quickly that you do want to do it regularly. So anything that is a month or fewer frequency is good to go. Best way of entering data in a new way. Yeah, historical data is the thing that keeps us from doing what we really want to do with data. So first is trying to figure out who's relying on that data and if there are things that are dependent on the data in the current state it's in, and finding out how changeable it is depending on the things that you rely on. If there are data points that are looking at it for like reports, and if you change something, it's going to break everything, maybe move with a little bit of caution. The other part too is finding out which people are really responsible for it and making sure that they're okay with the changes in the formatting. Build a standards guide that articulates why it's important to change the data and what the data is going to look like. And then there's a whole universe of tools that are out there that can help change data. One of my favorite ones, cheap pitch for Excel. I know Excel is not a database, but it is a database, and it's a tool that everyone's comfortable with. Excel within the past few years has incorporated something called Power Query Editor, which is the data preparation tool that is used for Microsoft Power BI, their analytics-based enterprise reporting tool. It uses the same, yeah, and it's available for free within Excel. It's also a no-code way of changing data. You can categorize data, you can mass transform data, you can take things like, if you don't want it to say OH in your state, you can say find OH and replace it with Ohio, and it will spell it out. That's another session for another day, but just note there's a lot of really tricky ways that we can do that with tools that we're familiar with. It's called Power Query Editor. Maybe I'll find a guide and send it along with everybody, but it is slick. It will also give you a way of documenting things on the right-hand side. So you can say, like, you right click on it and you change the name of the data transformation procedure you have, and you can be like, change state name to full text from state code. And you've got all of your documentation that shows all of those things. The cool part is if it lives in Excel, you can hit refresh and any new data pieces that you put in there will fit to the rules that you've assigned through Power Query Editor. So it will change new data as you start to append it to that Excel.
That's great. That's a great tip. I have a question.
Yeah.
Matt, you know, if you're on this call, you're thinking about data and how you can use it. Do you have any tips for getting your team to buy into put the data in, keep the data clean, use this data? Any tips that you have come, you know, in your time?
Yeah, the idea of adoption is really tough. It is such an intimate thing. So there's not a one size fits all for the types of personalities that are out there. One thing I would do is the most effective thing I found is find somebody who can be your champion. So if you can find somebody who's got an issue or somebody who's chronically stressed with so many hats they wear, and if you can help to take away one of those hats or make them happy about data, they will sing your praises and talk about the wonderful things that you've done through data. And that's such a simplified way. Like, you can also get the same results by just giving chocolate most of the time if there are people who are like big into sweets. That's a good way of buying into, but you will find a lifelong champion if you can help someone to alleviate their workload and help them to learn something through the power of data. So there's a little bit of shared pain in there, and that's okay. But ask the question, offer help, see what you can do.
Great, great. And Matt, we will probably send out with the documents that you mentioned, ways that people want to connect with you and take advantage of your services. Well, there you go. There it is. I was gonna say. All right.
Yes.
Well, we are just on. We have a couple minutes left, and if there is maybe one more question, we might be able to get to it in the chat, but I do want to point or give a shameless plug for two events we have coming up with AFP NEO. The first is our March professional development, which will be a panel panel that will discuss print with purpose. So we've done some print PDs in the past, and they always seem to be popular because even though we're all online now, print still has a place. And so we're going to be talking to a few different people and experts on how we can use print and use it effectively and strategically. And then in May, on May 1st, is our day-long event, which is called Focus on Philanthropy. And this is a full day of breakout sessions and speakers, keynote speakers on different ideas and things going on in fundraising. A wonderful chance to network. It's at Bounce Innovation Hub in Akron, so it's a really cool location. And so I put the link in there that will have both registrations on it. So we encourage you all to take a look at those. We'd love to see you there. I want to say one big thank you to Matt for this really wonderful presentation that's got us all thinking. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for being here today. And we hope to see you all at a future event.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being a great audience.
Yes, have a
Some of your
great day,
questions.
everyone. Bye-bye.